So, we are wrapping up our journey through motherhood sessions with this last session for the month of May. The journey into and throughout motherhood can be a very lonely place, but not here. Unashamedly You is a space to make sure you feel encouraged and seen no matter what season of life that you are in. And I wanted to take a moment and thank all of you for your unwavering, loyal support. There is no community like the community of kingdom minded women going after their God given calling. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. I am so thrilled to be bringing on our guest today. She is a pastor's wife, mom of two. She has a successful career, just absolutely thriving in all the things. I personally met her this year at the Business as Missions Conference in South Haven, Mississippi, and she spoke there. She did an absolutely incredible job. I know you all are going to glean so much from her. Sophia Allard, welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast. For those that may not know you, take a moment and introduce yourself to us.
Yes, thank you, Jamie, for having me on. I am thrilled to be here. We got to meet, as she said, at BAM, and it was such a great time. We had a great time together talking about legal things and just her podcast. And I got to meet her husband and some of her friends and family, and it was a great time. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sophia Allard. I live in California. Specifically, my husband and I, we pastor a church in Manteca. We started the church just over 10 years ago. We're going on 10 years. I have two little boys, as she said. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 2-month-old. So I am very busy right now, as many of you moms can understand. And I also am an attorney. I currently am off work, thank God, with the two little boys as we're transitioning, but I will be going back in a couple more months here. So I'm a in-house counsel. My title is general counsel for a staffing company. We are based in multiple different states. We're actually going global as well into Mexico, the Philippines, and India. So it's a decent sized company. And as general counsel, I advise our executive team on just a variety of different legal matters that could affect our company, different legislatures that's coming down that could impact how we're doing business, employment matters, contractual matters, just a whole host and variety of legal issues that are confronting companies today. So that's a little bit about me, but it's a very exciting job. I love what I do, and it keeps me really busy.
As if you aren't busy enough
Yeah.
with all the home things. So, you're currently an attorney. And I just have to ask the question, was this your dream job? Did you always want to become an attorney, or how did you get started on your career path?
Yes, that's a great question. So, as a young girl, I knew I wanted to do something in the professional world. I didn't really know what that was going to be. My parents were not professionals. They were great people, great hardworking people, but they weren't professionals by the sense of like an attorney or a doctor or anything like that. They had their own business managing properties, and it was really exciting, but I wanted something different for my life. And so as a young girl, I was living in the Bay Area. So any of you familiar with that area, we're surrounded by tons of incredible schools. UC Davis, Stanford, UC Berkeley. I mean, there's just a whole host of incredible schools. And so at a young age, I graduated high school when I was 16. I went straight to junior college and was intending to transfer out to go to UC Berkeley to do a business degree. I didn't know I was going to do law initially. I wanted to go the business route. The summer of 2012, I met my soon-to-be husband. I didn't know it at the time. I had told everyone around me I was never getting married. I was going to be a career woman the rest of my life. But God intervened. Thank the Lord. He had different plans for my life, and I'm thrilled about that. And I got married when I was 19, which is very shocking for the family that I come from, the area that I come from. People don't do that. They get married later on in life after they have their careers. But at that kind of point in time when I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, I was still kind of courting the idea of going to business school. getting maybe an MBA or something along those lines. At the time, my cousin was also an attorney. He had just graduated, passed the bar, and he was talking me through kind of what those steps look like to become an attorney. And he really just convinced me that that was the path to go over business school because there's a lot more job opportunities. So I did a complete 180, took the LSAT, and applied for law school. And here we are.
My husband is in school now to do his MBA. So he went the business route, got his business degree, and he got his bachelor's, got a great job, does other businesses on the side, and then recently decided that he wanted to get his MBA and he's back at it. So kudos to anyone doing anything in school because that is just not my dream to go back.
It's funny. I love school and I've talked about it with my husband. I might eventually do it for something for fun. I know that sounds terrible, but I enjoy the process of schooling. It wouldn't be something from like a professional development. It would be more of a personal development, just something I'd enjoy. So we've talked about it, but it's definitely not in the cards right now with the two littles, the church, and my current job.
My husband loves school as well, and he's loving all of his classes. And he doesn't want to take online classes. He wants to
Yeah.
go in person because he loves how much he's learning while he's there and all the things. And I'm just so grateful for all of you. I wish my brain worked that direction. But you practice law, and while also you've mentioned being a pastor's wife, you are a mom of two, you wear a lot of hats. Maybe speak to the mom that's trying to do several things in her current season because we understand a lot of times whenever you are spinning a lot of plates, some feel like they're spinning out of control. Maybe speak to a mom that's in that current season where she may be feeling like she's spinning out of control.
Yes, there's definitely those moments, unfortunately. I think when you are managing a lot of different tasks, a lot of different priorities in life, there are some areas that you may feel as a wife, a mom, an employee, or a business owner that you're missing out on certain things in those areas. The way that I like to think about it, I like to think about my priorities. First and foremost, obviously, is my family. Having children really did change my perception on my career, specifically, and how I manage my career and how I work. My husband, for Mother's Day, preached an incredible message, and it really was something we had been talking about for a long time in our family. But his title was Mary, the Mother of Jesus. And ultimately, at the end of the day, for women that are doing multiple different things, multiple hats, as you like to say it, spinning plates, whatever that might be. At the end of the day, our priority is to be, and my priority is to be Sophia, the mother of Theodore and Baron. At the end of the day, that's my identity. My identity is in my children. If you look at Mary in the Bible, there's not a lot about her. But what you hear about her is Mary, the mother of Jesus. Her identity is wrapped up in her son, Jesus, God manifest in the flesh. When you get that revelation as a mom that your identity is wrapped up in your children and that's the future, what you're pouring into them now is the future, and you become something because they become something, it really changes your perception on your career and how you're managing everything. So, with that kind of in the background, my kids are my priority. That's the future right now. That's the future that I am pouring into. So at the end of the day, if something does come up in the work context, and I have a ton of flexibility in my work context, so I'm very blessed in that regard. But at the end of the day, my priority is for my children. And if something intervenes in that, I will put my career on hold. I'm personally kind of at the crossroads right now with my career. When I go back to work, I'm going to ask for some very strategic things as far as management and how I'm handling my time and as far as the time I'm giving to this company. And if they don't allow it, then I'm going to do something else. I'm still going to use my career. I'm still going to do what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it somewhere else because at the end of the day, I am Sophia, the mom of Theodore and Baron. And those are the things that I can take to heaven with me. And I really mean that. That is my calling as a mom. But just because I'm a mom doesn't mean I can't do other things, kind of like what you've said. 10 years ago, we started the church. Initially, it was in Tracy, California. I was going to law school at the time. I was living an hour away from my church. We were driving back and forth. I think at the end of the day, wherever your priorities lie, God will honor that. God honored my priority in my church. He's given us great revival. We've purchased a facility, but I always put those things first. My career is something I've always wanted to do. And I'm doing it. I've been able to do it. God has blessed me to do it, but it's not the first thing in my life. That's not where my identity revolves around. I'm not first an attorney and then a wife. I've always been a wife first and then I'm an attorney. And now I'm a mom first and then I'm an attorney. So I think for those moms out there that are trying to balance all of those things, you have to understand where your priorities lie as a woman of God, as somebody who is spiritual. Those priorities lie with your family first. And that I think that's where things can get a little bit out of balance. And sometimes there are periods of time in life, and you probably know it, a lot of us moms know it, where you feel like, man, am I giving enough time to my family? Am I investing enough time? I think that's okay. There's moments in life where we get overwhelmed and things are going on, but as long as we can go back to that starting point of what's my priority, you will eventually get things in order. And I think you got to give yourself a little bit of grace to manage that process of getting things in order because it can get crazy and out of hand so quickly. But ultimately, go back to what you are. And you are a mom first, a wife. You know, those are the priorities in my life. So I am Sophia, the mom of Theodore and Barrett. And that's how I keep things in balance because I remember that's who I am.
I have never heard that before. And I am moved to tears, really, because it is so true. I am Jamie, the mom of Ada and Evelyn and Ezra, and everything that we do as moms, and like you said, as women of God in the kingdom of God, the best place for you to put all emphasis on is when you're doing it for the kingdom, you are showing your children, and it's putting emphasis on them, you know,
Absolutely.
and letting them see that, God comes first in everything and training them up, train up a child in the way he should go. My bishop once had told me, he said, you are training them right now. Don't ever underestimate what they wear, what they do, where you go, how you speak, how they speak at this age because you're training them up in the way they should go. You're not going to be able to start the training process at 10, 11, and 12 that you're going to be doing at 1, 2, and 3. That training process, and it's just reminding me, of all the things here. I love that you said you become something because they become something.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, and something my mother-in-law always told me, it's so true. I cannot take to heaven with me my career. I can't take my house, can't take my cars. I can take my children. That's my biggest investment in life is my children. And so at the end of the day, I want them, as a mom, I want them to far exceed what I've ever done. And my husband, we talk about it. We want our kids to far exceed anything we've ever done in the spiritual, in the natural, whatever it is. And so, with that kind of mentality, what you're pouring into your children currently has to exceed what was poured into you, which is a lot. And I had great parents. We both had incredible parents, but generationally, each generation should be godly. If we're in the church, should be getting better, exceeding that generational blessing just goes on and on. And so at the end of the day, our children are our biggest priority. That's not to say you can't have a career. It's not to say you can't do other things, start a business. Those are all things that we should be doing because, like you said, doing these things, we're showing our children how to be successful, how to live their life, and how to overcome obstacles. Those are all important things. But at the end of the day, we have to frame it from the standpoint of we're doing this to show our children how to live, how to be successful, how to live for God successfully. And that's really, honestly, it's kind of an epiphany that I've had lately, especially having a second child. For those of you that have more than two, I applaud you. I'm still working on managing the two right now, but children are a lot of work. It's not for the faint of heart, but if you get your perspective right, you really understand you're pouring into the future. You're pouring into your future as being the mother of those children.
Saying that each generation should be more and that your children should do better. I have always said I want to be Ada, Evie, and Ezra's floor. I want to be the floor. I want to go as high as I can go because I want them to have something to stand on. But
Yeah.
we want to be the floor. A lot of people say, break glass ceilings and they want to do all these things and shatter the ceiling. And I'm like, I want to be the floor. I want to
Yeah.
be what they can stand on, but they're going to automatically be able to go higher. Talking about these things as well. One thing that if you have ever listened to my podcast long or if you've seen posts on social media as well, you know that I always say there's no such thing as balance.
Yeah.
There just isn't, because when you think about being balanced, it's everything is the same. Whenever
Oh,
you get everything balanced on the balance beam, it's both the weight's the same on both sides. And there's no such thing as balance. And it's not really supposed to be balanced. And so I think a lot of times in our minds, we're raised to have balance, have balance, have balance, and everything has to have balance. And everything shouldn't be weighed against it the same way. God should be a higher priority than anything else that goes on. So, like you said, where your priorities lie, God will honor that.
absolutely. And that's where
That
your time is spent based off those priorities.
it is so true. And so knowing that, our priorities are in church and they're in God and they're in doing things for the kingdom. And then our priorities are our children. There are people that their priority was their career. And then they look back and their children are in a place where they never even realized they were going.
Absolutely. No, and you think about just the context of Mary, again, going back to that context of Mary, the mother of Jesus. You look at scripture references to her, and there's really nothing. Like Mary is so underrated in scripture. You obviously her genealogy, those sorts of things, the fact that she lost him in the marketplace. How did that happen? I don't know. Stuff like that. You hear those stories where she loses her son. But other than that, there's just not a lot about her. And at the end of the day, that's what's so profound about Mary. I mean, we think of God manifest in the flesh, which is incredible. We don't have to go into all of that, but she did raise him. He was still a baby. She raised Jesus, to the place where he was self-sufficient. And that is who she is. That's all is she is that person in Jesus's life. And at the end of the day, I am an attorney. I am a pastor's wife. Obviously, I'm a wife first, but pastor's wife, attorney, other things that I do in my life. I'm a pilot, side note, fun story. I mean, those are just things. What is the priority, though, is being that mother of my children. And all the other things are still important, not to say they aren't. They're very important. Being a pastor's wife is a huge responsibility, and I'm honored that I get to do it. But at the end of the day, I'm mom. And I'm so glad that that is one of my callings in life and my main calling.
And I love how you just threw out there that you're a pilot, like that's no big deal. And we're all like, oh my word, tell us a pilot story.
So the pilot story is actually how my husband and I met, which is so fun. I had been flying since I was probably 16. I just always wanted to do it. I'm kind of a daredevil, wanted to do the aerobatics, the tricks in the air, that sort of thing. So that was kind of what started. I went to an air show one time and I said, I've got to do this. I have got to do this one day. So I did. I started learning how to fly. And then long story short, a mutual friend introduced me to my current husband, my only husband, because I was flying with one of my dad's friends. He's kind of an older guy. I was just really uncomfortable. I was like, I need a new flight instructor. I feel like I'm not learning anything. The reason why I felt like I wasn't learning anything is because I was doing some very basic maneuvers on one of my solo flights, and they had to divert a Southwest airline because I almost was in their airspace. It was ridiculous. So after that experience, I said, man, I think I need a new flight instructor. And so that flight instructor just so happened to be my future husband. God was ordaining the pieces, and we did not know each other prior to that, but a mutual friend introduced us. And that's how we met each other, actually, as he was my flight instructor. And under his training, I got my pilot's license. And then I also got a husband. So for those ladies out there that are looking for their future husband, maybe turn to aviation. You might just find him.
I'm telling you, talk about soaring together from the very beginning. This
There
is
you go.
absolutely incredible. Y'all had no other way than to go up. Your future was starting out high.
Well, mine was going down after that Southwest aviation incident. Thankfully, it started to go up afterwards.
That is so fun and incredible. And you're a daredevil, which I am a firstborn, and I have every single one of the firstborn traits. I'm like all the things. And so I am not a daredevil. My sister is the middle child, and she is all the things middle child, and she's more of a daredevil. And I like want to be so bad. Like that sounds so fun. And I would be so scared and never ever look at an air show and think I want to do that ever.
I'm the baby. I'm not the oldest. And my sister's definitely more of the conservative, careful one. I'm definitely the adventurous one.
And yeah, well, the baby of our family is way more adventurous than probably even needs to be. So I can only imagine.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, Unashamedly You was created to be a safe space for women of God to unashamedly be able to go after their God given calling and outside of, all the things that we know are our priorities, which church,
Yep.
wife, if you're a wife, mother, if you are a mom. Outside of those things, our calling, it looks different for all of us. We all are called in to do different things for the kingdom of God, no matter what that is. I feel like that your career should point back to God. But what is something that you would say to someone? They're feeling that call to go forward in a career, but especially if you're a wife or if you're a mom, we feel that pull back as well, like wanting to make sure that our priorities stay online. And you've already touched so beautifully on all this. But what is something that you might would say to someone that is feeling that calling to go after a career at this point in their life?
You can do it. You can absolutely do it. It's possible. It's, again, back to what I said before, as long as you have your priorities aligned, you can make everything else still fit within your circle of living. Back to kind of when I was going to school, I wasn't a mom at the time, but I was a wife and I was a pastor's wife. And I had to make some decisions as far as what school I was going to go to based off of those priorities in my life. So I got into way better, like more incredible schools than the school that I ended up choosing for law school. But at the end of the day, I had to be close to my church. That was my priority item. So I still did it. I still went to law school, but I chose something that was a little bit more practical for my situation. So I think what I'm trying to say is there's always an avenue to complete those dreams, complete those callings that God has put in your life, those abilities that you have, but it might look a little bit different than maybe what you envisioned initially. Because again, in my mind, I was going to go to this incredible Ivy League school and, do all these things. But it just, at the end of the day, when I was a married woman and a pastor's wife, I had to look at those priorities and say, I still want to go to law school, but I'm going to probably have to give up on that Ivy League because that's going to put me, 1,000 miles away from my church. That's not going to work out at this point in my life. And I was fine with that. I was still able to go and proceed and do the law school path, but I chose a school that was close by. And this is what I will say, God is incredible and he will reward those priorities. When you have your priorities aligned, he will reward it. And I'm not saying this to give myself glory. This is to give God glory. I ended up getting a full scholarship to the school right by my church. I mean, it was an hour away, but it was the closest one to my church. God rewarded me aligning my priorities with his plan for my life. And that is ultimately, I think, for those of you out there that are trying to decide, what should I do? God will open the door and he will make sure that that door that opens is aligned with his values and his goals for your life. I will say though, that other doors may open that are distractions and maybe might not be the best for your family. And those you have to be wary of too. Because like I said, I got into really great schools. And if I wasn't prayerful at that point in my life, I would have maybe made some decisions that had taken me further from the plan that God had for me. And so you have to be careful. You have to be prayerful. You have to be wise. You have to be consulting with your pastors, with your husband, if you're married, whatever that might look like. But at the end of the day, there's a way to do it. And you just have to be creative in how you're doing it to keep those priorities aligned.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that it might look different than what you have envisioned and how you had planned it, because I think so many times and I will group myself right in there if anybody's listening to this and you're feeling this way, we get in our minds how everything is going to look. We have it all planned out and played out in our heads. And then God throws a kink in things, like you said with yours. You were not probably expecting that you were going to become a pastor's wife whenever you started talking to your cousin about going to law school and all the things. And so God can throw a little kink into things. And whenever you said you're prayerful and you're seeking God, you're seeking his will and those priorities, things can look a little different. Don't be so stubborn on it's got to be this way. This is how I have it planned out. This is how I've thought it out. And it's the only way we pray. I have learned, even personally, I have prayed and I'm like, I expected it to be this way. I expected it to look this way, even with Unashamedly You. I've
Yeah.
expected things to look a certain way. I expected to go a certain way. And then God, says, hey, let's reroute things, let's rework things. Or he, brings something up, opens a door. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk through this door, God, that you're opening. But I didn't plan on that door opening, or I didn't plan on it looking like that. I didn't plan on doing it like that. But whenever you are prayerful and you're walking with him, be flexible.
Absolutely. No, I think that is probably one of the biggest things to take away for those that are out there that are trying to navigate this. I mean, if this is a navigating this kind of situation is difficult. It is challenging, especially if you're like me, and it sounds like Jamie too, where we're just very like structured. This is what I'm doing, very planned. I have everything lined out in my mind. But God is the master planner, and He has the master plan for your life. And ultimately, you have to be flexible and spiritual and prayerful as you're making these decisions to pursue that God given calling in your life to make sure it's in alignment with His plan. And it's not just a plan that you're forcing on Him, forcing on your family. Make sure it's God's master plan. Just be flexible in that regard.
Yes, I've seen it happen both ways. One, where people were prayerful and they gave up their will, they gave up the direction that they planned on and their plans for God's, and He worked everything out beautifully, and it was His timing, and everything was just, couldn't have been better. It was God's plan. And then I've seen people and they said, no, it's got to work like this. I've got to do this. And they're dogmatic and it's got to go according to this, and this. And years down the road, they can see right where they made that mistake.
Absolutely.
So just realizing that God may be calling you to something, He may have called you to something. And if things aren't going the way that you expected them to go, that's okay too.
That's absolutely okay. It's the better plan, I promise.
So we've talked about and mentioned multiple times that you wear multiple hats. So on that, I'm sure that you've also experienced burnout. And that's a real thing if you're going after something, if you're doing something, even as a mom and in motherhood, there is a such thing as just burnout. The candle's gone. Okay. There's no more wax left. Do you have any advice or something that you would like to share on that subject?
Oh, yeah, that's a great subject. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, burnout is one of those things that I know when I'm getting short. I know when my attitude isn't right. For me, it impacts me with the way that I'm responding to people that I love. Unfortunately, that's how burnout impacts me. I start to get snippy, I start to get short, and I'm not the best version of myself, for a lack of better words. I'm not mentally capable to be normal Sophia. So that's a great question. Burnout, I don't have a great answer for that. I feel like it's just par for the course. I think taking breaks is essential. Taking time for yourself, and I don't mean like just self time. I mean like time with your family, like just time where the family can disconnect. You can all be together. I have an incredibly supportive husband, so I feel like when he senses me getting close to that level, he gives me grace, he gives me time, and we work through it as far as like, we need to take some time. And I listen, like he's that voice in my life where he'll say, you're getting to that place. We need to take some time. And I'm like, yes, sir, we got it. Let's go do something. So I think having that person in your life that can help you kind of balance out, not really, but balance yourself out from the standpoint of not getting to burnout is very important, and taking time. And I think also giving yourself grace because of all the things you are doing. You have to be gracious to yourself, and know yourself, and know when you're getting to that place so your family and your priorities don't suffer. I think that's the most important thing, is understanding yourself. And when you're getting to that place, doing something that you do that relaxes you, whatever that might be, so that you don't hinder those priorities in like for me, it's my family. That wasn't a really great answer, but I don't have a great answer for that one.
Well, I think a lot of times it's just acknowledging the fact that we all have that. I
Yeah.
think that sometimes we as women don't talk about that part. And so we don't even acknowledge that anybody else has it. And you feel like you're the only one feeling stressed out, burned out, or being snippy with your family. And this is really kind of just a safe space and question to let other people know you are not alone. One thing I'll add to that is you talking reminded me of something that I actually do. And one thing that I always say, write out your accomplishments. Write out what you've done. If you are like me, and if you're going after things, if you're doing things, if you're a part of this community, then I feel like that you are probably kingdom minded, which means you are goal oriented and you are wanting to go after things. You have things in life that you see in the future that you want to strive for and you want to get to. But so many times, we're not there yet. So we haven't hit where we want to go. And no matter where I go and how far I've come and what all the things that I have accomplished and I have done, there's still that next goal that I'm reaching for. And there's still that next thing that I'm going after. And so I don't even write down or take time to thank God and to realize what all I have accomplished. And so if you are feeling that burnout, maybe that would be helpful for you is to write out everything that you've done, everything that you've accomplished, everything that, you know, all the wins that you've had so far. And whenever you realize how awesome you are and all the things that you have done, it helps you feel better. And it makes you realize, like, hey, I may be feeling this way for a reason because I've done a lot. I am, even if it's just, you're tackling summer right now and you're making all the food and all the things that you're not used to doing if you're a mom like me with all your littles in school. If you're making it through the days, then that's an
You're
accomplishment. Write it
you're
down.
doing great. If you're making, I was just thinking as you were saying that I've seen like an actual calculation of the time spent by moms, the cost associated with being a mom. Like if you were actually hiring somebody to be a full-time mom, what that would look like. And for those of you moms out there, you're making six figures mentally, like as far as what you're doing, you're a six-figure employee in your family and you are invaluable. And what you're doing is pretty much 24 hours. You can't really hire anybody to do what you're doing. So give yourself some grace. You're an incredible person just as a mom. Like you were just doing incredible things. So keep it up.
I think one thing to think about too is looking back on it reminded me of, they say as a mom, and this is so true, as a mom, you don't really know how great of a job that you're doing with your children. Every once in a while you get these snippets and people will message you that they're kind or that they did something great or whatever. But overall, you don't really know how great you're doing until they're grown. And you're like,
Yeah.
man, I am an incredible mother. Look at what I have. Like you said, what they accomplished is what you've accomplished. And that is so true. And like Mary, the mother of Jesus, she was his mom. She raised him to be able to do what he did. She had to have structured him to be able to carry out what he carried out, his whole, being and reason for being here and those things. And she created that structure for him and she created the environment for him to be
Mm,
able to do what he was called to do.
yeah, absolutely. And when you actually think about that, it's incredible that a mom played such an invaluable role in Jesus, God manifest in the flesh. I mean, that's incredible. And that's what you're doing with your children. Obviously, our children are not God manifest in the flesh, but still, we've got a huge role in their life.
Some parents think their children walk on water, and maybe that's why.
There you go.
But in all honesty, it is so true. You're raising them and you're helping them and and we've dedicated all the month of May to moms and to motherhood. And, if you're not a mom and you're not in motherhood, I feel like that all of these podcasts this month would be able to help you. But also with this is, we focused a lot on being a mom, and keeping your priorities and keeping the main thing, and just realizing whatever you feel, however you're feeling, it all goes really back to those priorities and keeping them. So, talking about priorities and all the things, where do you see yourself headed in the future? Do you foresee owning your own practice, continuing down your law career that you have going on? Where do you see Sophia Allard
Yeah,
in a
great
few years? Or
question.
can you even see yourself in a few years? Or is it one day at a time currently?
Hey, sis, I have a 2 month old, middle of the night wakings. My brain is still a little foggy right now, and you could probably hear him screaming in the background. But if I had to say, I definitely, with my priorities in context, being a mom first, like I said, if I'm getting ready to go back to work in 4 months or so, I gave myself 6 months off, really off. And if they don't work with me from a real part-time perspective, I will go and I will do my own thing. And the way that I really see it impacting like our families, I really want to be a help to churches and to individuals that are dealing with, setting up nonprofits, that sort of thing. I've done a lot of work in that area. So I definitely see myself going that vein in the future, doing my own thing. I always will do something in the law. I love it. It's mentally stimulating to me, and I really enjoy what I do. So I want to channel that and use that to help the kingdom of God and help the people of God.
We love it. I love that. Obviously, that is what Unashamedly You is all about, is kingdom-minded women going after their God-given goals and dreams to further the kingdom of God. And that's exactly what you're doing, which is why you were a guest and asked to be on the Unashamedly You podcast. You have absolutely been incredible. Every answer has been amazing. And I know that all of us have gleaned so much from you. But we always end the Unashamedly You podcast asking one last question. And that is, if you could leave one thing to the Unashamedly You community, what would it be?
Absolutely. So, for those of you out there that are trying to determine which path you're going to take, how you're going to manage everything, and be the person that God called you to be, here's what I'll say: be faithful to God. He will be faithful to you. Stay spiritual. Remember your priorities, and God will honor the fruits of your labor.
You can trust the Lord. That is
Absolutely.
something that I say so regularly, and it is so true. And I remind myself, you can trust the Lord. You can trust Him. You can trust His plan. You can trust His help, and you can trust His mercy and His grace. And they are new every morning. So allow yourself to experience that. And this has been amazing. I cannot say enough good things about having you on today. Thank you so much for being a part of the Unashamedly You podcast.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
If you are not a part of our email list yet, make sure that you subscribe at unashamedlyu.com. And it feels really crazy to even say this, but we are now going into the halfway mark of 2024. If you are eager to start living out that purpose and you've not done it yet, you need a little direction on how to start, or you need some help on how to start dreaming big again, make sure that you click the link in our bio and schedule your first coaching introductory session for completely free. I cannot wait to help you start living out your dreams and fulfilling that calling that God has placed upon your heart. Let's make this the year that you live in faith over fear.